Welcome everybody to this very exciting webinar. I'm joined here with Cindy Carson and David Gardner, our two outstanding West Bloomfield Middle School administrators. And we're here to talk to you about an exciting pilot program that we're going to bring to West Bloomfield Middle School next year. As a reminder, if you have any questions throughout this evening, open up that Q&A at the bottom of your webinar bar, type in your question. Those will get addressed throughout the evening. Additionally, if you think of a question, which will more than likely happen after this webinar is over, the conversation can continue. You can reach out to Cindy, David, or myself, and we'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have. The recording of this webinar will be saved, and we'll have it posted to our website for you to reference later on in case you need to view something again. And the corresponding slide deck will also be linked up on our website as well. With that said, I'm going to give it over to the man of the hour for the next part of our presentation, and that's Mr. David Gardner.
Well, thank you, Scott. I appreciate the generous introduction. Good evening. Scott said I'm David Gardner, principal at West Bloomfield Middle School. And tonight we would love to talk to you about our Advanced Pathways program. So we're very honored to present this to you. First, want to start with a big thank you to all the stakeholders who helped us make this thing a reality. Starting with our own West Bloomfield Middle School administration, including Mr. Evans and Ms. Carson, our assistant principals. We also had a great team of teachers that helped us, Mackenzie Stewart, Lissa Morozic, Lindsay Dersham, and Brooke Valencia, really helped us pour over this and figure out what works best for our middle school students. We also were fortunate to work with our Scots Magnet team, Sarah Rich, Christina Cipolla, and Christy Law. Always a pleasure. Our high school team also helped as well, Eric Pace, and the very wise and helpful Susie Eisner, who her counseling perspective really helped in her programming knowledge at the high school and helped us make sure that we are putting our students in a position to succeed when they get there. And our always reliable and always helpful learning services team of Aiden Quinn, Hadil Azo, and Rebecca Heiss. And a big shout out to our West Bloomfield School District students and families. We were able to have focus groups that were both full of students and families and gave us some helpful perspective. And, we all have one resounding message that this is a needed opportunity for the middle school students in the West Bloomfield School District. Next, I want to point to our strategic plan. One of the great things I love about being part of the West Bloomfield School District community is that we have a very clear mission. And, the mission statement in our strategic plan speaks to our purpose for this programming is to support each student's needs by providing the opportunities, experiences, and educational tools for their journey. And this is a much needed bridge between our elementary program and our high school program that we've been missing for far too long. So we're hoping that this advanced programming kind of continues and furthers the high achieving programs and the rigorous programs that we have at the magnet level at our elementaries and leads the path to our advanced programming classes at our high school. So when we talk about the students that we are talking about, we have a couple of student profiles that I want to explore in our next slide. And these are taken from actual student profiles of our middle school and elementary students. So we have an 8th grade female who is a former magnet student who is currently enrolled in Algebra 1 and testing in the 97th percentile in math and ELA on her NWEA. And, the question that we ask ourselves is how do we live out the vision for this student between the magnet program and West Bloomfield High School? We also have a student who is currently a 5th grade male, a Doherty student who's in our Level Up Math. Whoop, whoop. Shout out to Level Up Math, which has grown tremendously over the last couple of years, testing in the 91st percentile in math and ELA and NWEA. And the question we ask ourselves is how do we live out the vision for this student to elevate their experience in middle school?
Cindy, before you jump in with this next slide, I also want to welcome Sonia James. She's also here on the panel. Sonia, thank you very much for joining us this evening and being a part of our group tonight. Thank you so much for your support too.
Yes.
All right. So we're going to talk for a moment about the current reality of what's happening right now at West Bloomfield Middle School and actually throughout the district at the elementary level with advanced math. So math is currently the only academic content area where we have that accelerated pathway. The students are leveled up in elementary, and we currently have a cohort group of fifth graders who come to the middle school for first hour, and we're just shy of 60 students, which is amazing. It's the largest group that we've seen at the middle school doing that advanced math as fifth graders. And so those students are on what you'll see in the second row where it says Math Path 2. So next year when they come to us as sixth graders, they would be in Advanced Math 6, and then they'd proceed into Advanced Math 7, and they would take, thank you, then they would take Algebra 1 as an eighth grader, which really helps them out when they get into ninth grade. They'll be in geometry and then move on to Honors Algebra 2, and then AP Pre-Calc, and then the AP Calc BC as a 12th grader. What I really want to highlight is what could happen in paths 3 and 4. As you see in 11th grade, that bright green AP Calc BC, if students can get to that by 11th grade, that really sets them apart and gives them an advantage if they're looking at some of the higher level, more prestigious universities. And we do have an opportunity for our students to do that if they basically level up twice. So as a sixth grader, some students will qualify to be in Advanced Math 7 and then proceed into Algebra 1, and as an eighth grader take geometry. We actually have 17 eighth graders right now who are on that path. Next year we're going to have 34, which is pretty awesome. So those students are going to be able to meet that AP Calc BC by 11th grade. Now, some students in Path 4, you can see that as a ninth grader, some students actually forego one of their electives and they take the honors geometry along with Algebra 2. And that also sets them up to be ready for that AP Calculus BC in 11th grade. So we have a pathway that is going to stay in place. This path is not going to be affected at all by the accelerated pathway that we are going to introduce to you next in the coming slides. So math is going to remain as is, and we'll continue leveling those kids up as it is appropriate and get them set up for that high school experience and beyond. So,
And what I appreciate, Cindy, about you and David's leadership, along with Jermaine, the work that you've done to relentlessly pursue students that you think have the potential to be really successful in those classes. I think across the district, we've made great strides in terms of breaking down some barriers to getting into that, whether it be level up math or advanced math. And our kids are showing us that they can rise to high occasions. So great job pursuing students and telling them that you think they'd be a great fit and getting them in there. So next is, did you know? Some of you may know a lot of this stuff, but I think it's pretty cool to share. I know at the high school, we offer 27 advanced placement courses. And what's great about those AP courses, each of them offer the possibility of college credit if students choose to take those AP tests. More importantly, research shows that taking at least one AP course increases chances of college success for students. So just one AP course, the rigorous course load of a college level type class is really going to help students when they move on to the next level. Did you know that this is an interesting stat that I learned from Noelle Essig, one of our college and career readiness counselors at West Bloomfield High School. If you take 10 APs and you have a solid grade point average and a strong resume, that's pretty much locking you into early admission at a school like University of Michigan. That's a path that some students want. And knowing that type of information is really helpful so that they can set the groundwork earlier in their high school career to make sure that they can accomplish that. Students with a math-driven focus, if they're really looking to go to a college and really thrive in the mathematic pathway, like Cindy mentioned, they need that AP Calculus BC by their junior year. It really increases their chances of being accepted into a premier university, whether it's MIT or another school. And that's another interesting fact, if students are looking for that math pathway. This is also really important. I think it's something that students often don't realize when they get into the high school is that a challenging course load senior year is equally as important as what you do freshman through junior year. Obviously, that freshman year is absolutely huge, but equally important is that senior year. I was actually having a conversation with a student who is at the high school right now, got accepted to University of Michigan, is a senior, and was going to drop one of his AP courses second semester until Mrs. Eisner noticed it and said, "Hey, have you talked to U of M about whether or not you should do that?" And he's like, I hadn't really thought about that. He reached out and they said, "Do not drop the course." So that rigorous course load senior year is equally as important. Rigorous reading and writing experiences are also an expectation of universities, especially premier universities, whether it's an AP Lang class, an AP Lit class, honors English classes. Those experiences throughout a high school career are really important. And what we started to ask ourselves when we look at some of those did you knows is how might we create specific conditions for enhanced pathways at the middle school, like David had alluded to earlier in the presentation. So current reality for the majority of our students from the middle school going to the high school typically looks something like this. They'll take English 9 in 9th grade. Some will choose to take the Honors American Lit class in 10th grade, Honors World Lit in 11th, and they're going to sprinkle in these AP courses here. Now, this is not like an exact science. This is just one possible reality for a student transitioning from the middle school to the high school right now. And then you can see they have some open spaces with electives as well here in these spots. So this pathway generally delays AP pathways in English, specifically those core English experiences that students need for their graduation requirements until about junior or senior year. And the pathway that Cindy will explain later on with the middle school advanced pathways program, what it's going to do is accelerate that for a student. And Cindy will explain this more later, but it's going to allow our students in 9th grade to take Honors American Lit as 9th graders instead of taking that in 10th grade. And you can see how that accelerates the timeline. If they're really interested in that English pathway, you might have a student at home who really wants to be a lawyer. This is a really great pathway for them as they get in and accelerate those AP opportunities, whether it's AP Lang and AP Lit, both courses that can count towards their graduation credits, and then adding in an AP seminar, AP research. And this doesn't even name all the AP courses that we do have at the English pathway, but it just kind of gives you a sense that with this pathway, it would accelerate the timeline for students really looking to advance in the English area and also help reduce heavy AP loads in their senior year. Let's say you have a student that's really interested in the social studies when they get to high school and they want to advance those pathways. Without what Cindy's going to mention later on in the presentation, this is what it typically looks like. Those AP pathways will typically start around 10th grade. They'll take AP US History, AP Gov. With this pathway that you're going to hear about later on, you can see that they're going to start with AP World History guaranteed in 9th grade, which opens up some more flexibility and really gives them opportunity to take these courses and more, like our AP African American Studies class, which is an elective class for social studies, AP European History. And so for students that have that passion for social studies, government, politics, it's a great opportunity to just really start to push that forward a little bit quicker in their high school career. Ultimately, you're going to find tonight that the Advanced Pathways program really will require a rigorous approach earlier in middle school, and it will also open up some opportunities for clear pathways in high school. So the Advanced Pathways equation simply is going to work like this. There's going to be a cohort of about 50 to 60 students per grade level. This 50 to 60 is pretty loose, but based on some of our data projections, we expect it to be right around that per grade level. It is criteria based. We'll talk about that later on and what that criteria looks like. It includes an accelerated middle school path in English, social studies, and science. Cindy mentioned earlier in the presentation that math is already covered and will continue to be covered in the way that we've done historically over the past several years. It will also have an intentional advisory period that supports the transition to this high level of rigor. And students that enter and meet the criteria will have a continuous commitment at the middle school once accepted. So once they're in, provided that they maintain a strong academic commitment and are successful with it, they'll maintain that commitment. What that allows is for an advanced pathway for high school that includes the things that we talked about: access to AP World History in ninth grade, Honors American Lit in ninth grade, and accessibility to more AP courses earlier and or more classes in certain pathways. A student may find that there's a passion they have for science, so it's going to help open some of those opportunities up. One constraint that will exist in this advanced pathway is there's a potential that it could limit some of middle school electives due to potential scheduling conflicts. Cindy works really hard on the master schedule, and she's going to do everything in her power to avoid potential scheduling conflicts with electives, but it is a possibility. So David mentioned earlier in the presentation that we've had lots of help and feedback and support from different stakeholder groups. The Magnet team has been absolutely essential. Our work and collaboration with them has really gone back about 2 years of work of just brainstorming what something could look like at the middle school. And their feedback ultimately led us to really think about how do we make sure that we create opportunities for teacher and student collaboration in this program. We know that the teachers that are teaching it are going to need opportunities to collaborate, and the students that are within the program need those same opportunities. We also worked heavily with the high school administrators, specifically Eric Pace and Susie Eisner, and their biggest pieces of feedback for us were to be really mindful about sequencing and those avenues for advancement to set our students up for success at the high school level. We also surveyed students, select number of students throughout the middle school and at the Magnet level. We had a focus group with some parents in the community, some parents that have had Magnet students in the program, some that have never had Magnet students. And we had feedback from teachers as well. And the resounding thing from them, in addition to believing that we needed some type of opportunity like this, was that we need to be really mindful about the selection process and the criteria that's included, the supports that we provide for those students once they're in the program, and then also student awareness and family awareness, which is one of the reasons why we're having this webinar tonight. We think it's really important to inform all of our community of this opportunity, and it's also equally important to inform our students as well. So students will get information about this in the coming weeks as well. I'm going to kick it over to Cindy, and she's going to talk more specifically about what this program will look like.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Okay, so this slide outlines the advanced pathways, the course sequencing. So if you look across 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, you will see on the first line for ELA, our English classes will be working a grade level above. So 6th graders will have ELA 7. Then they'll proceed to ELA 8, and in 8th grade, we will be offering an ELA 9 class. Now, these classes will be taught by middle school teachers. The kids will stay in the building with us, and we will have these offered within our daily schedule. For social studies, again, there'll be advanced classes, social studies 7, social studies 8, and then as an 8th grader, we're going to have a pre-AP social studies class in world geography and history. Now, the interesting thing about that is if you are familiar with our 6th grade content, the 6th grade history currently covers geography, so kids would be skipping over that and then picking some of it back up as an 8th grader. So we realized that throughout this process, there's going to be some holes and there's going to be some areas that we need to lift the kids up and fill in those gaps. For 6th grade science, we are calling it Honors Science 6. The kids are going to have the same content as our general 6th grade science classes. However, they're going to do a few more units of study and dig a little bit deeper into the content. So we realize that these students are going to be able to take the content at a faster pace and then be able to do some more advanced programming and projects. For 7th grade, they'll have Honors Science 7 and then 8th grade Honors Science 8. They will have an advisory period, which we'll talk about on the next slide. The electives are still going to be offered. However, as we know, there are some kind of one-off classes. Our leadership class, for example, I can cite that as like this year, for example, it was offered 4th hour. If a student was in a certain level of orchestra or band that happened to meet that same hour, then they were not able to do both. They have to kind of pick and choose. The same thing could happen with our STEAM classes because those classes are not offered every single hour. When we get into Spanish 1, that class typically is offered almost every hour. Art classes are almost every hour, right? PE classes are every hour. The choir, it depends on what level they're at, and so forth. So we want the kids to go ahead and put their elective choices in as if they're not part of this path right now and just go ahead and create their wish list. And I'll be working with the counselors, and you may be getting some phone calls over the summer just to say, hey, this is the option that we have, and what would you like to do? So we're going to be flexible there, and we want the kids to just, go for it, and let's, roll the dice and see what happens, right? We got to run the experiment here. So it's going to be a really great opportunity for our kids and open up some doors for them that they haven't had before. So there are going to be some trade-offs. All right, I think
Cindy,
we're ready
one
for
question
the,
that popped up that's directly relevant to this slide.
yeah.
Actually, two that are directly relevant to this slide. Will the STEAM classes be available in their electives? Those are still available for those students that qualify for STEAM. And obviously, if they're qualifying for
Yeah.
this, they also qualify for STEAM. The other question
Hmm.
was, how large are the classes going to be at each grade level in the middle school? If we're looking at about 50 to 60 students per grade level, we're looking at about anywhere from 25 to 30, capped at 30 for those classes. So if you're in the program starting in sixth grade in the ELA 7 class, you're going to have max 30, anywhere between 24 to 30 kids in that class.
Good questions. Okay, so for the advisory, with the advanced pathway, our students in this program would be assigned to their science or social studies teacher, and that will be a cohort group. And the reasoning for that is so that the kids will have that experience to have an additional half hour of time with that teacher to really support the students through the rigor of this course load and just pick it up and support them throughout the course of the school year. So, as it explains there, just opportunities for support with acclimating to the rigorous experience and that shift as part of their middle school experience. There would be opportunities, perhaps, to dive a little bit deeper and spend more time on those science and social studies projects that they would currently be engaged in. So they will be grouped. Now, one of the questions that was brought up from our staff or a point was, and as Mr. Long mentioned, there would be maybe 24 to 30 students in a class, but it won't be those kids going to every single class together. Okay, so keep in mind that if they have ELA with a certain group of 25, they might go to their science class, and some of the kids from that class will be there, of course, but not all of them, because we're ideally going to have 2 sections of each of these cohorts.
And another relevant question that came up regarding this slide is for those students that are in the advisory enrichment. If they qualify for this program, they move into this advisory course, correct? And then other students that are not in advisory enrichment will have an opportunity to be in that program, correct, Cindy?
Yeah, the kids are still going to we're going to get to the criteria in a couple of slides here. So it is criteria based to be in this program. So it's not a guarantee if they're in the enrichment advisory right now, does not mean they automatically would qualify for this program. So we're going to talk about that shortly. It's actually on the next slide. So
Yeah,
there we
so I'm going to talk
go.
next
Good
about
segue.
the criteria to get into the program. There is some initial criteria that we'll talk about in a moment, but the first thing I want to point out is all the criteria that you're going to see on this slide will be part of the student's final score to determine whether or not they meet it and get into the program. And there'll be a cut score. Students that are above that cut score will get into the program. So we first are going to do some initial criteria screening. Part of the reason is to make sure that we find and seek out any student that could potentially be a good fit for the program. The first screener is we're looking for students that are in the 81st percentile or higher in their ELA map growth assessment in one of the last 3 NWA windows. So last spring, this fall, this winter. So that's one initial criteria screening. The second are their grades. So for our rising 7th and 8th grade students that are currently getting A through D grade letter grades, we're looking for a 3.5 or higher semester grade point average. For our 5th grade students that are moving up to 6th grade, we're looking for an average of a 2+ on their standards-based grades in each core area. So as you know, 3 is the highest, 3+ is the highest they can get. If they have an average of 2+ or higher, they meet that initial criteria screening. Once that criteria screening is completed, we will send out a communication to the students and families to invite them to opt into testing if they are interested in this program. So it may be that we have about 110 students that meet this initial criteria for a grade level. Those 110 students and families will get an invitation to say, hey, we'd love for you to come in and take the next round of testing. An interesting caveat about this. For families and students that do not receive the invitation, we'll tell you a little bit later when we're sending those invitations out, they may request the opportunity to opt into the additional testing if they feel as though their initial criteria screening is close enough to that expectation. So as an example, maybe there's a student in here that had a 4.0 GPA as a 7th grader, and they were like the 78th percentile for this reading assessment. They reach out and say, hey, we really want you to consider testing my child because of X, Y, and Z. We'll review that and send that invitation out if it's appropriate, which in that case, it definitely would be. I will say if you have a student that is consistently tested in the 50th percentile in their NWA ELA, my guidance and response back is going to be more than likely like it's going to be really hard with that score to get in and meet the cut score. It's probably not going to be the right fit at this point in time. It doesn't mean it won't be the right fit later on, but at this point in time, it might be a bit of a stretch. The advanced pathways testing. So once you get that notification, it will take place. We'll tell you the date here towards the end of the presentation, but it's going to include 2 additional pieces. The COGAT screener for that relevant grade level. The COGAT screener is not something you can really study for. It's an aptitude test. In this case, this test is 3 different sections that are 10 minutes in length, and the students take that and get a final overall score. The second piece is we're going to have them do an on-site essay, a writing assessment. The students will get a prompt. The prompts are different for every grade level. There's a rubric for it. The students will have a checklist. They'll complete that on-site and submit that before they leave for the day. At the end of the day, all of these criteria points that I just mentioned, the NWA ELA, the grade point average, the COGAT screener, and the writing assessment will be scaled on a 1 through 8, 8 obviously being the best, 1 being the lowest. The average score of all those final criteria points will lead to a total possible score for the student that equals an 8. The students must meet the cut score that we designate in order to qualify for the program. David's going to talk next a little bit about eligibility. If a student gets into the program, what's expected of them on an ongoing basis.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, so what I want to talk about is maintaining eligibility, because we want to make sure that we put students in this program once they do the work to get into the program, that we maintain their status in the program. And part of that is an ongoing data review to review that eligibility status is continued for the program. And we'll look at those grades and also keep track of their NWA reading assessment. Also, we want to make sure that there's an opportunity for students who may not be, in our district right now, or students who may not qualify at this point to enter the program after the 6th grade. So if space is available, students that are going into 7th or 8th grade will have the opportunity to enter the advanced pathways program. Each winter or spring, the data collection and testing process will occur in order to make sure that this opportunity is available. So again, there's not just one way in at one point. There's flexibility. One of the things we want to make sure is that this is an opportunity for all of our current students across all of our grade levels. So this is just an extension and representation of that commitment to students new and current.
Excellent. I'm going to answer some questions that are in here before I'll go over the timeline first, and then I'll start to answer some of these questions. So timeline wise, March 3rd through 10th is when students will get communication about the program in that window of time. So they'll get consistent communication that looks the same, regardless of the grade level. So they have an awareness of the requirements and the expectations of the program. March 10th is the date that we'll send the invitation to the families that qualify for advanced pathways testing. There'll be a form that gets included in that communication where you have the chance to opt into the additional testing. If you choose not, if you don't think it's the right program for your student, that's okay. You just don't have to fill that form out. By filling out the form out, that's basically your RSVP to show up that day. As a reminder, that opt-in window is from March 11th to March 20th. So you have a lot of time to think about whether or not you want to come in and take that additional testing. And as I pointed out, families or students that don't get that invitation on March 10th may reach out to me to request that opportunity to opt in. We know there's some variance and deviation in assessment scores. We also know that some students may not be the best testers, and so we want to give them us the opportunity to review those requests. April 11th is going to be the day of testing. It'll be a marathon day for us at West Bloomfield Middle School. We'll be sending out specific times, dates, locations for those students that qualify for that testing. April 17th will be the acceptance notifications. So you'll find out whether or not your student has met the criteria. In May and June, we make our teacher assignment decisions. Throughout the summer, those teachers will have professional learning and planning opportunities to make sure that they're ready to hit the ground running with our students. We're also going to be sending out some student summer learning that we want the kids to do to make sure that they're ready to rock and roll when the fall hits and that they're properly supported. Cindy had mentioned earlier about like there may be some gaps or things that we want to make sure that they have a foundation in before they make the jump. It will include things that look like that. In the fall, we'll launch the pilot. After we launch that pilot, we'll continuously revisit ways in which we can refine it. It's a pilot for a reason. Anytime you try something new, there's always ways to improve it. And so throughout that year, we'll spend time looking at ways to make it better, possibly ways to expand it. And then we'll take that to the Board of Education to vote on. There are some questions in here that I do want to address. And I also have on the next couple of slides some other frequently asked questions. So let me make sure I get them. First one, would students be expected to be accelerated in all three tracks? In this pilot, next year, that is the expectation. We do believe that exposing the students to the acceleration in all those areas is going to help them make some informed decisions about what they want their high school experience to look like. And we also think they can do it. The next ones are about NWEA. Specifically, the question is about the percentile being growth or achievement. So on your NWEA assessment, your child has a growth percentile and an achievement percentile. We're looking at their achievement percentile. We recognize that the higher you get up on that achievement percentile, the growth is a little bit smaller because it's that much tougher to show lots of growth. So we're looking at achievement. Example, if a student is in the 81st percentile in their achievement, that indicates that their RIT score is better than 81% of the students across the nation that took that assessment. Let's see, so that covers that one. It is a Saturday for the testing. Yes, that is correct. I'm going to buy David bagels for that day. Right now, our window for the testing is tentatively speaking from 9 to noon. That may or may not go a little bit longer into the day. We're still kind of ironing out all the details for the exact schedule, but you can expect that to be morning into early afternoon. I answered that question. Okay, the next one was for students that were previously in the magnet program, do they have to take the COGAT screener again? And the answer is yes. We want the most recent and relevant data to make accurate decisions about students that get into the program. Is there a place all NWA scores are available, like Power School? I wish that were the case. For some reason, we have a connectivity issue with the Power School. However, there is a family report. I know, like right now, when we send home our NWA scores in the fall and spring, it just shows for the year. But there is a full family report that shows scores across the course of time. If you want that report, all you have to do is email Catherine Law at WBSD.org. Catherine, KATHERINE .law, LAW at WBSD.org. It covers that one. The next one I want to address is about this program specifically and our approach for all of our students. First and foremost, we want to acknowledge that the students that get into this program, this is a very high level, like advanced pathway. That's not to say if your student doesn't get into this program that they're not college material, because they are. My son will not get into this program. He's not going to meet the criteria. He'll be a sixth grader next year. And I realize that. But what it will do is it'll give him something to work for. And he is going to go to college. He's a level up math kid. He's going to be a great contributor in all of his classes. And he's going to learn and grow a ton. And he likes a good challenge. So he's coming for it, David. He's coming for it. But he's not there yet. And that's okay. He's on the track for college. And I would say the same for any kid. If you're a family out there listening to this, this is a really high echelon program that we're piloting. And it does not mean if you don't get in that your kid's not college material, because they are. And there are going to be plenty of opportunities for them to continue to make growth and be on a great pathway. The high school counselors do a wonderful job getting kids into where they need to be and getting them on that correct pathway early and often. I answered this. How are magnet students' grades evaluated since some of the grading is different? The magnet students have some letter grades, so that's going to mesh up with our middle school model. Ultimately, we're looking at grade point average, and if they have a combination of standards and letter grades, we have a plan to make sure that tracks. How do you account for kids who do well in school but struggle on standardized testing? They can obviously handle the schoolwork. This is a great question. And the reality is, when you look at lots of programs across the county like this, even when you look at getting into high-level colleges, one factor that remains is performing well on these tests. And I think that's one of the reasons why the middle school has worked so hard at their level to help students increase that, whether it's their PSAT camps that they're offering, their assemblies on how to use Desmos, which is the math calculator within the SAT, what they do during their advisory hour for all the students with IXL and ALEX that mirror and mimic standardized testing. The more and more practice that students have at that, the more successful they're going to be. I do want to validate and acknowledge that standardized testing can be challenging. And we also think that we can continue to prepare those students to be successful with that. This is a great question. What is the plan for top performing kids who don't qualify? My fifth grader didn't do advanced math, was the top student in their class, and felt like their teacher had no time for them because all the lower kids were in their math class and needed all the help. I think when we look at our teachers across the board, one thing that they're equipped with and expected to be able to do is differentiate for all students. When David talks about like our mission statement of each student having the opportunities, tools, and experiences that they need, that's what we're going to give teachers to support them, and that's what teachers are going to give to students, is differentiate and support students and challenge them regardless of what pathway that they're in. I think this one will be addressed in the frequently asked questions. Were the winter NWA scores sent out? We typically do not send out the winter scores. We send out the fall and spring scores. If you want your child's winter score, you can, again, reach out to Catherine Law and she can share that with you. The reason we don't send out the winter scores typically is we look at it more internally. State requirement is fall and spring, and the winter is more something that we look at internally to support students mid-year. But if you want that, you can reach out and she can provide that. Yes, to confirm, will rising 7th, 8th graders have the opportunity to test this year? Yes. And it's for all 3 grade levels. If there are students that have other obligations on a Saturday, you'll connect with me and we'll figure out how we might address that. My hope is that as many people as possible that can be there. And we also understand that there's things that pop up in schedules. We'll do our very best to accommodate that. If a student starts in the advanced, I have that on the frequently asked questions as well. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. We have some FAQs that I think will be addressed with some of these other questions. There's one of them. I knew that one was going to come up. So as I mentioned, it's not one of the content areas, it's all for this particular pilot program. If your child does not meet the criteria this year, will there be additional opportunities to enter as a 7th or 8th grader? David alluded to this. We're going to run the data every semester, and we fully anticipate that there will be openings and future opportunities for students to enter the program later if and when they meet that criteria. And when that happens, we'll, on a case-by-case scenario, support those students based on what they need to make sure that onboard is smooth and seamless. Will this program include engaging and fun experiences? I think I was reading a question about how will it be similar to the magnet program, because we know they have lots of fun in there and they learn lots as well. Our teachers that are going to be selected to lead these classes will get professional learning. They are going to be able to connect with the magnet program as well as the high school teachers to ensure that, yes, the classes are rigorous, yes, they're accelerated, and they're also very highly engaging. Collaborative experiences, deep project-based learning experiences, and also moving at a very good clip. This is a question that we get, and I think it might be in there, is how do we support students in a way that prevents burnout? It will be a challenging experience. And my recommendation is, you know your child best, and the students that are going in here really should be equipped with some good emotional regulation strategies to begin with, because that's important to have good coping strategies. Additionally, at the same time, the advisory period is also going to be a place, like Cindy mentioned, that's going to support students with that transition and help them with executive functioning and managing the workload and ensuring that that doesn't happen. World language opportunities might be something that comes up. We would really encourage kids that are entering into this program to take Spanish 1 before they leave the middle school. That's going to set them up to move on to Spanish 2 at the high school level, potentially AP Spanish 3, if they so choose to go down that road. Can students offboard from the program if it's too much for them? Yes. And when that occurs, administration is going to work with the student and the family to really design a clear pathway to transition out of that program. When you think about like what Cindy talked about with the science program, it's the same curriculum and standards that another 6th grader would have if they're in the advanced pathways. So there's not going to be much of the transition there will be easy. Social studies, the big piece is because they're skipping that 6th grade history, which is more like basic geography. There might need to be a little bit of backfilling for a student there, depending when and if and how they transition out. English won't be much of a transition at all because the standards spiral. So the standards for English from 6th to 7th to 8th are very consistent. They're just more rigorous and more deep. So Again, those will be case-by-case scenarios based on what students need, and the administration will support students in the event that occurs. David, Cindy, while I'm kind of filtering through the other questions, is there anything else that you guys want to add that I may have missed?
There was just one question I noticed that came up about families that are in the district as school of choice. Yes, those students are eligible to be tested, even our rising sixth graders. So I just wanted to mention that if there was anyone attending tonight, that your student would be eligible to test as well. Yeah, just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and please reach out with any additional questions. We're happy to help, and we're excited.
Yeah, same here. Just looking forward to getting this program going. From some of the feedback we've received, we know this is an opportunity for a lot of our families. We're just happy to be able to provide.
About how much work will the students have per night or per week at home? Cindy, David, like, what is your estimation right now for an everyday middle schooler right now? Like, roughly weekly, nightly, what does their homework load look like?
It really varies upon the child. I think as students are learning to manage and regulate their time in class versus taking stuff home and pouring more into it, I think there are kids who get everything done in class and maybe there's a little bit of review and study at home. Then there are kids who just really want to do the very best and beyond. And those are going to be the kids who really take on more and want to go above and beyond and are probably spending more time. So I think your child in terms of what, their personality is like and what they put into their coursework. It's hard to answer that question. I think, if they have more than an hour of homework per night, that's probably pushing it. Like that's a lot. It really, I would say probably 20, 30 minutes, but it depends too, when they have tests and, quizzes and things that they need to study for. There's always time to go back and review. Some kids push themselves and they do a lot more in IXL and ALEX at home because they like that and they want that. So, I think if that's a concern, then that's something that we should probably discuss and sit down and meet about it, talk further in terms of what type of learner your child is and how you could see them fitting into the program if they have a lot of extracurricular activities. We know our kids in middle school are taking on a lot in terms of sports and dance and other things that they're involved in. So we try not to overload them, with a ton of homework. A lot of the reading and, things like that may take place in class. Some classes are even listening to audiobooks, more and more now. Yeah, so I don't hear a lot of families complaining about too much homework. If anything, they want more sometimes. So, I think that as we grow this program, we're going to try to strike a balance there of, what can the students handle? Because that rigor during the day is going to be strong. And then we want them to be kids at night too. We want them to have the social activities and build those friendships and get involved and stay after school for clubs. We have a variety of clubs and activities that we want our kids to be engaged in. And we have photography club, we have chess club, we have, all sorts of things going on and opportunities for these kids to build friendships. And I think that's super important at this stage. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Good advice. Yeah, I think it's going to vary from kid to kid. Like
Mm-hmm.
in my very simplistic brain, homework wise, probably expect anywhere from 1 to 3 hours per week ish.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah, and kind of Cindy's point, by design, I think, the contemporary educator, we want kids to do the work at school. Kind of to Cindy's point, we don't want school to be something that kids have to take home, but generally by design, I would say that most of the instruction is designed to take place during the day.
Mm-hmm.
sorry, I'm just answering a few questions via typing. This is a good one. I appreciate this because he must be a social studies teacher. And if you don't know the social, I'm going to track back to. Ooh, did I miss it? Where'd it go? Where'd my little questions go? I don't need it. I'm going to go back to the slide that Cindy highlighted all the way back. I should be able to just, there we go. Okay. This question really relates to students, specifically students going into 8th grade next year. And it really relates to this piece right here. If you don't know social studies, 7th grade social studies is world history. 8th grade social studies is American history. So the students that are going to be going into 7th grade for this program are going to take that American history here. But then you're going to have your students next year that are going into 8th grade that will essentially be skipping that American history piece. And then it's going to surface back up in 10th grade with AP US history. So the concern is, how do I make sure that my child is prepared for American history when I'm losing that 8th grade experience? So a couple of things are going to happen. One, the critical pieces of the priority standards, that's going to be some of the summer work that students are going to be asked to do. But two, during that advisory period, there's going to be intentional pieces where students have access to like make sure that they're briefed and aware of what they need to know so that there's not a huge loss there. It's going to require some extra work on those students' part. I think I got all the questions in the chat here. Where did my little question go? There we go. I did mention the summer work. I'm going to go back to that one though, if you didn't hear me. Someone said I didn't mention the summer work. All right. Timeline. We will be asking the students to do some summer work. We're looking at like some hybrid experiences where they'll do some work in Canvas. They'll have some like office hours to pop in and get some support when needed. But that is going to be an important part of this transition. We don't want to set anyone up to fail for anything. And that's why it's really important for those things that they're going to be skipping over. We want to make sure that we backfill and give them that support. I think, guess what? I think I answered all the questions. That was a good social studies question. I like that one. Near and dear to my social studies teaching heart. Okay. Well, that addresses everything for this evening. Like Cindy and David said, I just want to thank all of you for taking the time to be here with us this evening. This recording will be made available on our website along with the corresponding slide deck. And of course, you know how to find Mrs. Carson, myself, or Mr. Gardner. So please do not hesitate to shoot us an email if you have additional questions. Until then, David's like, thanks for loading up my inbox.
No, we got one more question. I just got a chuckle off that one.
That
My
is
good friends there.
Oh, it's great. I love that question. So, well, yeah. So that's everything for this evening. We're just really appreciative of the partnership between our district and you at home, and we look forward to many more great things to come. Have a great evening, everybody.